Shalom from Jerusalem. This is TV7's Israel at War update. And as we're set to deliberate the latest developments here in Israel, throughout the region, and somewhat beyond, it's always important to highlight that today we mark day 599 since the Islamist Hamas and its terror affiliates in Gaza committed their atrocities, heinous crimes against the civilian communities surrounding the Gaza Strip on October 7th of 2023. Since then, when the Islamist Hamas kidnapped at the time 251 people, mostly civilians, 58 remain in Hamas captivity, of them up to 20 still amongst the living. And with me here in the studio to deliberate that and update us on the latest is sitting in for Amir Oren is Colonel in Reserve, Reuven Ben Shalom, who is a cross-cultural strategist, but also a longtime member and panelist here at TV7. It's great to have you with us, Colonel.
Thank you, Jim.
The IDF is intensifying its operational activities throughout the Gaza Strip. Nevertheless, it seems like much chatter about a potential deal, outline to a deal, something of sorts, but it's full Gaza neutral, seemingly.
First, we have to remember that the Israeli government and Israeli people are continuously talking about a seven-front war. So we say Gaza, but always this is one component in a much broader picture of what's happening now, reshaping the Middle East, as our Prime Minister says. But in Gaza itself, under the title now Gideon's Chariots, it's the code name for the operation we're in now, another phase in this war that is much more than before, a battle of narratives and a battle of nerves maybe, because we still have 58 hostages. The government keeps saying that our objectives are to return the hostages and defeat Hamas. Doesn't translate so good from Hebrew, but in Hebrew, the term is a decisive victory, to defeat decisively, hachra'ah in Hebrew. And understanding that after this long war and not achieving yet the goals of the war, this has to combine and merge these two effects, and that's where we are now.
Absolutely. Well, with us to deliberate this further are both on the left, Brigadier General in Reserve Doron Gavish, commander of the Israeli Air Force Task Force for Air and Missile Defense. Next to him, Brigadier General in Reserve Dr. Amnon Sofrin, formerly the Chief of Intelligence at Mossad and a senior officer at the IDF Intelligence Directorate. General Sofrin, we'll start with you. When we're talking about the Gaza Strip, what would we classify as a decisive victory, as Colonel Ben Shalom just mentioned?
I think the decisive victory will be combined of two main components. The first one is the fact that Hamas will not rule Gaza. That means that somebody else will have to take care of everybody living in Gaza Strip. It may be a combination of people coming from Egypt or Saudi Arabia or UAE and all of them together to combine some what we call a mutual multi-purpose force that will control Gaza and will downgrade Hamas to what we call a very low level. That means it won't participate in what happens in Gaza and then the control on Gaza and the domination of Gaza. That's the first one. The second one is the fact that we began together with the Americans, of course, in cooperation, to deliver all the goods and all the medical supply and humanitarian aid via American companies to the residents in Gaza. That means that Hamas no longer controls these convoys. It can't take hold on that because every family will get directly from these delegations of the Americans everything she needs. That means that humanitarian aid, medication, and so on. And that will downgrade the ability of Hamas to control the area. Hamas is trying to fight. He's trying to convince people not to go to this position or to this post where humanitarian aid is being delivered, and to deny them from doing that. But I don't think that that will hold too much, and this is the beginning of a change in Gaza. That means that I think that decisive victory, another leg that will be initial, is that all the leadership of Hamas will get out of Gaza to an exile, and I'm not sure that we can promise that each one of the people that belong to Hamas will be disarmed from his weapon systems, but at least part of them, and this is only the beginning of what they call a long and enduring effort to try to stabilize the space.
Indeed. Thank you, General Sofrin. General Gavish, over the past 9 days, the IDF has been operationally gaining ground, so to speak, achieving quite the significant operational achievements, both from the aspect of eliminating terror operatives amongst the ranks of the Islamist Hamas, alongside the degrading of countless terror infrastructure, both subterranean as well as on ground. But nonetheless, despite the fact that now the IDF controls roughly 70 to 75% of the landmass of the Gaza Strip, it seems like this achievement is not preventing Hamas from launching projectiles towards the southern communities of Israel, with 3 projectiles launched over the course of the past 48 hours alone, 2 of which have landed within the Palestinian enclave's territory, and the third one, of course, intercepted by the Iron Dome defense system, which you integrated back in 2012 in the IDF. Looking at this challenge, is there a situation in which Israel can prevent such type of rocket fire hermetically, or is this something that we could see even happen after the war concludes?
Well, Jonathan, allow me just to follow up for a short minute on the discussion that was initiated by Colonel Reuven. When we're talking about decisiveness, and this is what Israel is trying to do, we have to remember that decisiveness is part of our national strategy. And when we talk about our national strategy that started back then in 48 and was reshaped during the 90s, we are talking about 4 pillars. One of them is decisiveness, one of them is alert, one of them is deterrence, and the last one is defense, active defense, and passive defense. So when we're talking about decisiveness, which is what Israel is trying to do in the Gaza Strip and also in some other places that we are fighting in different sectors, it is part of basically our national strategy. So this is for what we have talked about a few minutes ago. Going back to your question, indeed, Jonathan, we always say there is no hermetic defense, and there is not hermetic, I would say, in the offense. It is the same. We could compare what the Hamas could do today to what it could do at the beginning of the war. We have to remember that Hamas shot at the first half an hour of this war 3,000 projectiles at the same time. Now we are talking about 1, 2. So this is basically the situation that we are at. The Hamas, the vast majority of its capabilities were destroyed, but still there are some capabilities in those terrorists' hands, and they are trying to do their best from their point of view. Of course, immediately the IDF is reacting to it. And what we are trying to do is, as much as we can, once we know about a launcher or about someone that is producing rockets within his house or small factory or whatever, immediately we are trying to attack it in order to avoid even the situation that we would have to deal with those rockets. Of course, we are trying to intercept them in real time, and the vast majority, once again, of those rockets that came from Gaza in the last year or so were intercepted. And we are also what is called in the military or the Air Force terms, we call it punishment. We punish those rockets and those Hamas terrorists that are trying to shoot the rockets. Immediately upon shooting them, there would be a fixed wing or UAV or helicopter or other means that we have that would attack them. So this is where we are at, not hermetic, and we have to remember that we are still during the war, and it's the last few days, it's a more intensive one.
Indeed. Well, Colonel Ben Shalom, when we're talking about the battle of narratives, right now we see Spain hosting a EU summit, so to speak, of various foreign ministers to include Slovenia, Spain, Ireland, Norway, and, of course, within that context, also the leading actors within both the Organization for Islamic Cooperation and the Arab League, Qatar, and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, during the course of which the Egyptian foreign minister comes out and says, namely Abdelati, that Israel is to blame. And you hear the Palestinians also declaring that Israel is, of course, to blame, the Palestinian Authority, that is. They didn't invite Hamas in this context. But nonetheless, we also hear the Spanish foreign minister coming out and urging the international community to join Spain in conducting an arms embargo on Israel. What are we to take out of that?
First, and I apologize for this, but first we have to do a better job because we're not very good at public diplomacy and explaining ourselves externally and internally. So there's a lot of issues to talk about there. Externally, there's a lot of ignorance. What can you do? Unfortunately, sometimes our good friends and partners, even of ours, don't fully grasp the situation. And sometimes their efforts that could have led to a cessation of what's happening now, they could have years ago stopped Hamas from what they're doing now. Instead, many times their efforts are what perpetuate the problem. I don't think they're doing it on purpose, but ultimately that's what happened. The international community, in a way, enabled the monstrosity that is Hamas to continue pouring in money and aid for years. So right now, even now, as we speak, talk shouldn't be about the humanitarian situation right now and how many trucks went in, which is, by the way, very important. It's our responsibility. It should be all of us, including Spain. How do we end Hamas? How do we de-radicalize this place? How do we realize the dream of having a flourishing Gaza that lives side by side with Israel? Not all subscribe to what I just said now. There are other fantasies now and other strategies now. But that is the effort that should be going. So I personally stopped being insulted from that and angry. We should more divert our energies together, mainly with the United States, but certainly with the European Union, and move forward and try to eliminate Hamas as far as the ideology, as we're now pushing forward also on the ground.
Indeed. Well, what amazes me is that, the country that ultimately supported and facilitated with proven documents that indeed took place, part of the Organization of the Islamic Cooperation Organization that, of course, unites various Muslim countries, not only Arab countries, is no other than the Islamic Republic of Iran. It granted $500 million to the Islamist Hamas to prepare for war against Israel, and then ultimately committed, of course, the atrocities of October 7th. But now we see the Iranian president, Masoud Pezeshkian, traveling to Islamabad, meeting with the Prime Minister of Pakistan, and saying Pakistan and Iran stand shoulder to shoulder in support of the Palestinian cause. What is the Palestinian cause if not Hamas's declared aspirations to annihilate Israel? All the while, we see also the Pakistani Prime Minister coming out, despite the fact that they had clashes with one another just a couple of months ago, saying we support a peaceful nuclear deal or a nuclear program for the Iranians, of course, paying lip service to try and appease their Iranian neighbors. But nonetheless, General Sofrin, when we're talking about the ongoing negotiations, it seems that there are vast gaps between the two sides. The Americans, on one hand, are adamant about not granting the Iranians a full fuel cycle, with focus on the enrichment program being taken out from the equation, while the Iranians say it's a non-starter.
This is the real gap. The real gap is about enrichment. Enrichment is what we call the very important and very initial phase within the fuel cycle or within the nuclear cycle. That means that the Iranians insist that they will go on enriching uranium up to the level of 3.67%, which is what we call for civilian use, not for military use, because for military use you need higher enrichment. It means about 90% and above. And on the other hand, the Americans are now claiming that they won't allow any enrichment on Iran soil. Now let's go back into 2005 and 2015. On both cases, the Iranians signed agreements with the Western countries and insisted that they'll keep on enriching uranium, to possess the centrifuge for R&D and for other purposes, and to maintain everything that they have, except from what we call the nuclear reactor in Iraq that was sealed. But nevertheless, everything remained as if it was on 2015. Now the Americans are trying to change the equation and to demand that no enrichment will be on Iranian soil, and for the Iranians, there's no starter. And I believe they will get to some compromise because I believe that the Americans don't want to go into a large war with Iran and to drag the whole area into a mess. President Trump always declared that he wants to end up wars and not to initiate new ones. And therefore, I believe that in the end, they will get to some equation, some agreed equation that will enable the Iranians to keep some capability, but not as much as they want right now.
Well, I have a hard time believing that the Americans would tell their Saudi counterparts during President Trump's trip just recently to the Gulf that they do not agree to the enrichment of uranium in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, while then going and allowing an enemy country, namely the Islamic Republic of Iran, having an entire fuel cycle to include enrichment. Of course, we'll have to wait and see since negotiations are very fluid, and I must say that the people surrounding President Trump negotiating the nuclear deal, as well as the various actors surrounding that, are very tight-lipped when we're talking about the current discourse behind closed doors. General Gavish, when we're talking about the prospects for reaching such a deal, I'm skeptical.
Well, we could be skeptical, or we could be, on the optimistic side. But we really don't know what is going on, unfortunately, within those discussions. We know what it is Israel's stand. We know what the Americans are saying, what the Iranians are saying, but where would be the point that if there would be an agreement, what would be exactly within this agreement, we don't know yet. Of course, from the Israeli point of view, the red lines are very obvious. Israel said it more than once. And by the way, also President Trump, we have to remember that he announced again and again and again that Iran won't have weapons of mass destruction, period. I don't see him backing up from this. I fully believe that this is what he means. This is what United States means. And I hope that this is what would happen as a result of this negotiation. Going back to your statement of being skeptical, we have to also remember that we are preparing ourselves also for this situation, that the negotiation would fail. And we said it more than once that there are other options on the table, because at least from the Israeli point of view, and not only the Israeli point of view, the words of President Trump were that very bad things could happen to the Iranians. He said that he doesn't want it, but if they would choose this path, so very bad thing could happen to them. And this is, and Prime Minister Netanyahu, of course, said it again and again, that we won't allow weapons of mass destruction in the hands of the Iranians that are still and continuously supporting, you said it yourself, Jonathan, in the last meeting with the Pakistanis, supporting Hamas, who wants to destroy Israel. So let's be optimistic. You know what? Let's try to be optimistic, and let's hope that things would work, but also realistic, and prepare ourselves that if things won't work, we would still make sure that the Iranians won't have weapons of mass destruction.
Si vis pacem para bellum, namely, if you want to prevent a war, you need to prepare for one. Colonel Ben Shalom, your take on that, and also within the context of preparations, as a former pilot in the Israeli Air Force who understands the mapping and the preparations for such a complex operation, to what degree do you see the current stages being vital in also conveying that message to the Iranians of there is a credible military threat at this point in time. And unless you play ball with the Americans in the negotiating table, the consequences will be dire.
In the past, this was a more complex debate. First, because it was secret. We couldn't talk about it. For years, I would train. By the way, I don't throw bombs. I would maximum rescue the downed pilots, if God forbid we had any. But so we couldn't talk about it. And second, even when we would threaten, someone could say, yeah, Israel's a small country, Iran is far away, the bunkers are underground, what could Israel do? But now, one of the positive outcomes of this war is that everyone showed their cards, or the masks have been torn. We demonstrated our capabilities, so we know we can reach anywhere in Iran. We already stripped them of their strategic air defense, so we can actually fly, do whatever we want, strike wherever we want. And even as far as capabilities, there's more. It's more on the table. So when we say that this option is on the table, it's obvious. I think it's also obvious when you look at Iranian rhetoric now. They're scared. They're certainly scared of an Israeli strike.
Such as the letter they just sent to the International Atomic Energy Agency.
That is a demonstration of being afraid of what Israel will do, and almost saying, hey, everybody, stop Israel, because if you don't stop Israel, we're going to do this and this and this. Well, even that threat, I don't know how serious to take that. But certainly this is a real option on the table. There is the issue of us and the Americans. I don't think it would be wise for Israel to act alone without the United States, certainly not defy the United States. But here I'll say that unlike most of the things you see on the media recently, we're very much aligned with the United States, and we have a very good dialogue and cooperation. Many things are happening there that are positive. So here, don't believe the headlines usually. By the way, as far as the talks themselves, I think that even if they do reach a deal, and it's not easy, read back how the whole entire U.S. team and Wendy Sherman, if you read her book, it's not easy. And even if they do reach a deal, it will be hard to sell internally Iran to their own people. They'll say, what, you capitulated to the Americans? The United States themselves, politics there are very complex. And in Israel, because almost any deal, whatever we settle, there'll be Israelis that will say, don't believe Iranians. How can you believe them? For what they want to achieve is to eliminate Israel. They're going to lie and cheat their way to the bomb. So it's complex, even if we do reach a deal.
Well, Wendy Sherman, of course, was in charge of those negotiations during the Obama administration and subsequently also played a vital role that ultimately failed in the Biden administration's aspirations to reach some type of deal.
Right.
But nonetheless, when we're looking at the complexity at hand, we also need to, my skepticism is derived from a certain assessment based on data from the field rather than the talks behind closed doors. When an Israeli delegation of the head of the Mossad and the Israeli Minister for Strategic Affairs travels to Rome to meet with the American envoy, Steve Witkoff, heading the American delegation negotiating with the Iranians, in a meeting that is extended beyond the predetermined boundaries of that or the pre-scheduled meeting. And then subsequently you see both the Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, who is waiting for the American envoy, waiting some more, not just waiting extensively, and then being received and having that dialogue with the Omani mediation supposedly, and within that context then also gets to a point where the negotiations abruptly end before time, and then the American envoy leaves. It raises questions. And that is the bottom line to that. We have less than 3 minutes left. General Sofrin, General Gavish, very briefly, if I may ask, what are we to expect in the next 24 hours? What should we focus on in this context? General Sofrin, we'll start with you.
I think, first of all, we have to look and wait and see what happens with the negotiations with Hamas about releasing the people that are being abducted and held in Gaza, captive for almost 600 days. And second, to look and see what happens when the negotiations between the U.S. and administration in Iran, or the U.S. delegation in Iranian delegation, and to see whether it is going on or is it what they call a dead end, and we have to look at some other solution.
Thank you, General Sofrin. General Gavish?
Well, Jonathan, I think that we still have to remember also for the next 48 hours that we are fighting in 7 different directions. And we had the Houthis remind us today, in the last few days, that they are still there. Although we did intercepted all the missiles that were shot toward Israel. The threat is still there. And this is something that we would also need to take care of. So those are the Houthis. And as I said, we have to remember that we still have the northern border and the Hezbollah, which is trying to play his own game within the agreement boundaries and to push the boundaries as much as they can. We still have the Syrian border, and we have to make sure that the Hezbollah is not being rearmed, and the other sectors that we are during this fight we have to deal with. So I would say that still we have to be focused and alert. Focus in Gaza now and Iran, but very alert in all the other sectors.
Absolutely. Well, with regard to the Houthis, they claimed that they struck Ben Gurion International Airport. Did not happen. They tried. And they also established a gag order about all the funerals of their senior leadership who've been killed during the American campaign, and have asked everybody to keep secret the degree of degradation of their various installations, which obviously indicates the severity of the situation. One sentence, Colonel?
The humanitarian mechanism. We have to be clear. We have to be straightforward with this, make it happen, make our friends understand what's happening, the situation on the ground, and how we're taking care of it.
Colonel Ben Shalom, General Sofrin, and General Gavish, thank you very much for all of your insights today, and I'd like to thank all of you at home as well. Until our next edition, from here in Jerusalem, Shalom.
My name is Doron Gavish, and my background, 30 years of serving in the Israeli Air Force. My last job, I was the commander of the Israeli Air and Missile Defense during the introduction of the Iron Dome to the defense of Israel. All of this allows me really to be part of the team here in TV7. It is super important to have such a platform. We talk about the global situation, we talk about Israel, and those different angles which are relevant to the discussion.
For more of TV7 Israel's productions and editorials, we invite you to visit our website at www.tv7israelnews.com.